Welcome everyone to our ongoing classes on Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, the 7 universal divine commandments for all of mankind, for the 70 nations of the world. And in this particular series, this is class 9 in the encyclopedia S'dei Chemed, which is the halakhic, the Jewish law encyclopedia. And in the standard printed version, this is volume 8, and we are currently on page Aleph, Taf, Reish, Tes, which would be 3217, or opposite page, the page that's marked 3216. We're going through various different issues in Jewish law from the oral tradition, from the Talmud and so forth, and certain ideas that are pretty clear how they apply in the Jewish law to a Jew. And even though many of them may be very detailed, but there's great discussion, and we know what to do. There's the Jewish code of law. The question is, in these very same terms, or in these very same principles, how and when do they apply to Bnei Noach? So right now we're in the middle of a lengthy one. The past 2 classes, we've been discussing the concept of Bitul, when you have something which is forbidden that got mixed into a larger quantity which is permitted. So in Jewish law, it's very detailed and quite clear how and when we do apply this concept of nullification, of Bitul. For example, if a little bit of non-kosher food that a Jew may not eat from fell into a large mixture of kosher food. So there's rules as far as what's the ratio and etc. So the question is, does that apply to non-Jews, and how does it? So we're actually like right in the middle of this particular topic, and we went back and forth. We have the pre-Megadim, which is one of the primary commentators, if you will, on the main commentators in the Jewish Code of Law. And the pre-Megadim, so we're trying to see what exactly is his opinion. Is there Bitul, is there nullification when it comes to the non-Jew, or not? So let's continue from where we are, and that would be on the top of the left-hand side, the beginning of the new paragraph, which begins Hincha, Hey, Nun, final Chaf. So S'dei Chemed, page 1317, left-hand column, and that would be about 8 lines down or so. So says the S'dei Chemed, Hincha roye. So you see, the Hagoin Shoylu Meshiv, that this great genius, the author of a response of a book called Shoylu Meshiv, excuse me, Michlefa Shitase, B'dasa Pri Megadim. He switches his opinion in what the Pri Megadim holds. V'ha'ikar nira midvarav shebesimen samech beis. The main thing that comes out of the whole discussion here, it appears from his words, and he tells exactly where, which chapter, which section in the Code of Law. The yoiser noite daitoi, that it makes more sense. He's leaning that his opinion of the Pri Megadim is The gam bin nochri azlina basaruba. That also when it comes to a non-Jew, we do go after the majority. We do follow the majority. Umasha agoin marshal benoida beYehuda tinyana Evan Ha'ezer Siman Mem Beis Kasav B'Shem Agoin Prima Gadim, and that which a different, very accepted, very authoritative author in Jewish law, known by the title of his book as the Noida B'Yehuda. So he tells us exactly where there it is as well. So the Noida B'Yehuda wrote, in the name of the Pri Megadim, which is the one we're discussing. We just got through saying that it seems like the Pri Megadim finally holds that by non-Jews as well, we go by the majority. And there is Bitul. Yet, the Noida B'Yehuda writes that the Pri Megadim holds, Shesoiver, the Beven Noyach Lo Yishayach Acher Rabim. That when it comes to a Ben Noyach, to a non-Jew, we cannot apply the rule that the verse states, Achrei Rabim, that you're to go after the majority. As we discussed earlier, there's a verse which says, follow the majority. And that rule applies whether it's in the vote, in the opinions of the judges that are ruling a particular case. So if you have, let's say, a court, and the number of judges, let's say 23. 23 judges can rule capital cases. And let's say there's a split, which is only normal, and 10 say one thing, and 13 say otherwise, assuming that everybody had a vote, had an opinion, which doesn't have to be the case. So the Torah says, go by the majority. That's the rule. And we don't take into consideration how wise are the 10. If they're all members of the Sanhedrin, of the court, that means they're all within the same league, within the same category, even though it may be very clear to all that certain individuals of the minority are much greater in their Torah knowledge and in their scholarship, etc. Doesn't go by that. The Torah says you must follow the majority. So that's how it would apply when judging a case. Whether it's an individual or two litigants, whatever the case is. Similarly, in other things. So, the Noida B'Yehuda says that the Pri Megadim says that by a Ben Noyach, the whole concept of going by the majority doesn't really apply. Kasav Kain, so he wrote this, Al pi divrei Pri Megadim shebereish sha'ar hataruvos chakira gimel. Now, where did the Noida B'Yehuda derive this from? Based on what Pri Megadim does he say this? So he tells us exactly where in the Pri Megadim's writings. It's in his section about the laws of mixtures, very appropriate, where we speak about various mixtures such as the mixture of meat and milk, which is forbidden for a Jew. And over there, he discusses Eiver min hachai, Chad bitrei, I shari leven, liten leben noyach. Eiver min hachai, as we should all be familiar by now, that is the Hebrew terminology for the prohibition of eating a limb, or for that matter, any part of a living creature that was detached from that creature before the creature was dead, which is forbidden for Jews and for Bnei Noyach. It's one of the 7. Whatever part of the animal, if it was removed from the animal, if it came off the animal, fell off the animal, cut off, doesn't matter. While the animal was still alive, whether the animal continued to live many years after that or whether the animal died a second later, irrelevant. That piece, that flesh, whatever it may be, is forbidden for human consumption. All right. So now the question becomes that you got a mixture. you have a piece of meat, let's say, which is Eiver Min HaChai, and somehow got mixed up with another 2 pieces of kosher meat for the non-Jew. Meaning the meat doesn't have to be edible for a Jew. It wasn't ritually slaughtered. It's meat of an animal that the animal died and then afterwards was cut up. All right? So you have a mixture. 2 against 1. 2 permissible pieces of meat. 1 Eiver Min HaChai, forbidden piece of meat. So what do? And they got mixed. You know 2 of them are good and 1 of them is forbidden. So, the Pri Megadim writes, this is his question, the one way of looking at it is that it would be permissible to give it whether we're allowed to give it to the Ben Noach, because on the one hand, they have no concept of going by the majority. So the fact that 2 of them are good, and that should outnumber the 1 piece, maybe not. Or perhaps say, no such thing. So the Pri Megadim continues and says as follows, being that there's 2 ways to look at it. Is there the concept of majority by Bnei Noach or not? Now, since biblically speaking, Lididan, to us Jews, says the Pri Megadim, Shari, it's permitted. Biblically speaking, if a piece of non-kosher meat got mixed with 2 pieces of kosher meat for a Jew, and you don't know which is which, you got 3 pieces now, 1 of them is no good, 2 of them are good. Biblically speaking, for the Jew, it's all good. The only thing is that, rabbinically speaking, the rabbis, they made many decrees, which is a whole discussion for itself, and we've mentioned it many times. And as far as the Jewish religion is concerned, the legal observance of the Word of God, so God gave a certain amount, actually a very tremendous amount, of not only authority, but of rights for what we guess we would call rabbis, to be able to make decrees. And actually, in truth, that is a whole lecture in and of itself. It's based on verses, and it does not mean that today, or the past few hundred years, so-called rabbis can make such decrees which are universally binding for all Jews. But in the past, let's go back to through the times of the Second Temple at least. Surely till then, the sages at the time had the ability and they had the God-given authority to make decrees. And therefore, for the Jew, there are so many things which are absolutely forbidden, rabbinically, even though biblically they're permitted. It's a very, very long list. And you could take certain precepts, certain commandments, and you say, here's how it looked biblically, and here's how it looks after the rabbis made and introduced their decrees. So same thing over here. A mixture of a forbidden food with permitted food. Biblically, you go by the majority. If 51% is good and 49% is no good, it's good. Rabbinically, not good enough. And the rabbi said no. Okay, so for us, rabbinically, it is forbidden. Lididhu, so for them, meaning for the non-Jews, af midrabanan shari. So then, rabbinically, it should also be permitted. I mean, we don't find that the rabbis instituted this decree, or so to say, this safeguard for the non-Jew. So therefore, we go by the biblical law. The Jew can't follow the dry biblical law because he's bound by the rabbinic law. But if the rabbis didn't make such a decree for the ben noyach, for the non-Jew, well then it is permitted. Oy mashkachas bebasar min hachai, or as can be found by flesh of a living animal. So based on that discussion in the Pri Megadim, that's what the Noida B'Yehuda is referring to. After having explained this Pri Megadim, the Noida B'Yehuda concludes, Haregam Agoin Hanal. So behold, this great genius, meaning the Pri Megadim, also Kosav wrote to the Gabi ben Noach leShaych Achrei Rabim. Af beruba deisei kamon. Ad kan l'shoinei. That when it comes to a non-Jew, a ben noyach, you cannot apply the biblical rule of following the majority, even when it's right in front of us. When we have the entire mixture in front of us, we know there's a forbidden piece there, and we know that there's a majority of permitted pieces. No problem. It is permitted. That's how the Noida B'Yehuda understands the ruling of the Pri Megadim with regards to the Ben Noach, to the non-Jew. So, says the S'dei Chemed here, Kanire, apparently, it seems, Shehevin, that the Noida B'Yehuda understood Shemashakasa Batchila, that which the Pri Megadim wrote at first, Lididhu leis lehu achrei rabim, hu koisef came bepshitus, that when he says that for them, for the non-Jew, there is no concept of achrei rabim, of following the majority, he wrote that just straightforward and simple. As if he's talking about a given known fact, an undisputed fact. And from the fact that the Pri Megadim, or rather, the Noida B'Yehuda doesn't mention the Pri Megadim's opinion later on in the actual, his commentary on the Code of Law itself, in chapter 62. He's only discussing what he says in his introduction, but not what he comments later. Nira, it seems, he didn't see it. That the Noida B'Yehuda simply didn't see that Pri Megadim. That's what he wants to suggest. Had he seen it, if the Noida B'Yehuda would have seen the Pri Megadim on chapter 62 in the Code of Law, Hayadon, Loimar, he would have judged, he would have ruled to say, Shemashakosav, Bishar Hataruvis, that which he writes in his gate of mixtures, Lididhu Leis Luachar Rabim Chulu, quote, according to them, for the non-Jews, there is no concept of following the majority. Loisha Koisav Kain Bipshitus, not to be understood that the Pri Megadim is writing that simple, as if that's a given. Elohu Hatzad Tzodim Lekanu Lekan. But rather, it's all part of the Pri Megadim's discussion. This is part of his inquiry. That there's two ways to look at it, back and forth. Yes, no. Does it apply to the non-Jew, the rule of going by the majority, or does it not apply? So don't misread the words of the Pri Megadim when he says that we don't say Achrei Rabim by the Ben Noyach. That may not be a factual statement. That's just one way to look at it. That's just a suggestion. V'tzad echad hu And one side of the argument would be that perhaps, this is how you have to read the Pri Megadim, that perhaps for the non-Jew, there is no such rule, there's no principle of go by the majority. Like the Pri Megadim actually does write in his commentary to chapter 62 in the Code of Law, where there, it's clear that he's going back and forth, and he doesn't have a conclusion. He says, should we say that, or perhaps should we say the opposite that? In other words, instead of saying that in the actual Code of Law, in his commentary on 62, the Pri Megadim was unsure, and he's presenting the case, and he's going back and forth, and he doesn't have a conclusion. However, going back to his section, like his introduction, to the laws of mixed, forbidden mixtures, there he already has a conclusion. So the S'dei Chemed says, no, that's not how it's to be read. Rather, the Pri Megadim is not giving a conclusion. And just like it's clear that in 62, he's presenting both sides, when he speaks about there not being the principle of following the majority in his introduction, that's where he's speaking one side, but not that he's saying conclusively. Next paragraph, right in the middle of the left-hand column. V'nireh, and it appears, that based on that which the great genius, the Pri Megadim that we're talking about, in his introduction, revealed his opinion, namely, the benoisein kol chaticha levenoyach b'fnei atzmoi leis dina v'leis dayona deshari. That if a Jew was to give, was to feed each piece of this mixture individually, one at a time, to a ben noyach, whether it's to the same person or each piece to a different person, it's irrelevant. If the Jew is taking these pieces and one by one individually giving it to a ben noyach, so there the Pri Megadim says there's absolutely no one and there's no room to permit it. V'loi mitam bitul. I'm sorry. Sorry. There's no room to forbid it. One piece at a time. Which means that I'm clearly, definitely handing one ben noyach, a forbidden piece. Eiver min achai. But it got all mixed up. Before the distribution, it got all mixed up. I have 10 pieces of kosher meat for a ben noyach. Regular meat. I have one piece of eiver min achai. They are exactly identical. There's no way to tell the difference. And it fell in, and they're all mixed up. No way to tell the difference. What do we do with these 11 pieces? So the Pri Megadim says that if I take one piece at a time and I hand it, no problem. All 11 pieces may be consumed by bnei noyach. All right. However, v'loi mitam bitul. The reason is not because we say that it gets nullified in the majority. Since 10 out of 11 pieces are permissible, therefore the non-permissible, the forbidden piece, is not there. Nope, that's not the reason. It's because of a different principle. Something which is a doubt. Something which is a doubt as to whether it is prohibited for a ben noyach is permissible. Okay, he's just mentioning a whole discussion. There is a whole discussion with regards to a Jew. The bottom line, everybody agrees in the Jewish law that if there is a biblical doubt, if there's a doubt as to whether something, a biblical prohibition is there or not, so everybody agrees that for a Jew, it is forbidden. The argument is that principle a biblical one or a rabbinic one? Everyone agrees that if there is something which is a doubt as to whether it is biblically permitted or forbidden for the Jew, so it's forbidden. We have to be strict when in doubt. Okay, but there's two opinions. Is that principle a biblical one, or really biblically it's permitted because it's only a doubt? And the rabbi said it's forbidden. Says the S'dei Chemed that, from the Pri Megadim, that it doesn't matter. Either way, that only applies to Jews, that if there's something which is doubtful as to whether it's biblically forbidden or permitted, that we have to be strict. Mikol makoim, but nevertheless, leven noyach lo yasra Torah safik. The Torah did not forbid a doubt for bnei noyach. So it's a whole different principle. In other words, both extremes, the clear extremes, are the same, obviously, for the Jew and for the non-Jew alike. If there's something which is forbidden, it's forbidden for sure, and I can identify it, and it's absolutely forbidden. Well, then it's forbidden. There's nothing to talk about. There's a piece of meat that is Eiver min achai. One piece of meat, Eiver min achai, no doubt. A Jew can't eat it. No question about it. A ben noyach cannot eat it. No question about it. Very good. Then you have a piece of meat which is kosher. It was properly, ritually slaughtered, and it went through the whole process of checking and the internal check and koshering it with salt, etc., etc. It's kosher meat. Well, then the Jew's allowed to eat it. It's permissible. The non-Jew, the Ben Noach, is allowed to eat it. It's permissible. Very nice. How about you have this piece of meat where we don't know? I don't know. We don't know the facts. It might be Eiver min achai. It might be kosher. So for the Jew, stay away. It is forbidden. We don't find that the Torah forbids such a case for Ben Noyach. Sort of the question of whether innocent till proven guilty or guilty till proven innocent. That's sort of what it boils down to. So in the case of permissible, forbidden, and prohibited things for the Jew, it's basically, so to say, guilty till proven innocent. In other words, when a Jew sits down to eat food, sort of, don't take this out of context or don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Sort of, the attitude has to be, oh, it's not kosher. It's not kosher. I can't eat anything here. But now let's check. Oh, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Oh, guess what? I can eat the whole thing. The steak, the potatoes, the salad, it's all good. I can eat it. Okay? And for the non-Jew, Ben Noyach, no, it's the other way around. You serve him food, it's all kosher, it's all good for me. Ooh, what is that? And they tell you, well, that is, whatever, I don't know, crab or whatever. Really? It looks like it's still alive. I said, well, yeah, that's how we serve it, and that's how our customers like it, and just break off one leg at a time. Oh, can't eat it. I can eat the side dishes, can't eat that. That's Eiver min achai. But if you're not sure as to what the situation is, and you can't find out, you don't know. You're served a piece of meat. A Jew can't just sit down and eat a piece of meat assuming that it's kosher. A non-Jew is permitted to eat a piece of meat assuming that it's not Eiver Min HaChai. It's not a limb off of a live animal. Okay. So that's why you're allowed to, the Jew can distribute, can feed these pieces of meat, where one of them I know is Eiver Min HaChai, just don't know which one, I can give it to the non-Jew. Not because of Bitul, not because of majority and the minority being nullified in the greater, but simply because the rule of when in doubt it is forbidden does not apply to Ben Noach, because we don't find that it does. Nire, so it seems, that we need to say, that when the Pri Megadim wanted to prove that when he says that since we don't establish that this limb it became nullified in the majority, meaning that we could have said that when the Talmud says, that one of the rabbis in the Talmud, Rabbi Nassan, says that the Jew should not extend Eiver Min HaChai to the non-Jew, which means don't give him the entire mixture as one. I can't give him all three pieces. Remember, one is Eiver Min HaChai, two are kosher, and they got mixed up, and now I got these three pieces, and I know the majority is good, and I know one piece is no good. Then I can't hand him the whole thing. Because when you do that, you're definitely and clearly giving him something which is forbidden. But if it's one at a time, there is no absolute definite prohibition. So if I have three Bnei Noach in front of me, sitting in front of me, I have three pieces of meat. One of them is Eiver Min HaChai, but somehow it got mixed up. I don't know which is which. I would be allowed to take each piece individually, and one to Mr. A, one to Mr. B, and the third one to Mr. C. I don't know which one of these three people I gave the forbidden Eiver Min HaChai to. I definitely did. Two of these people I gave them what they're allowed to eat, and one of them I gave them what he's forbidden to eat. But I don't know. So because of that, each piece is a doubt. A doubt, no problem, it's permitted. But if, let's say, I have one guy, just Mr. A, non-Jew, Ben Noach, Mr. A, he's the only guy who came to eat by me. I cannot take these three pieces on one dish and hand it to him and say, here's three pieces of meat. Go ahead. Because I'm clearly, I don't know which piece it is, but I'm giving him something forbidden, as opposed to the other case. So, in other words, it has nothing to do with Bitul. So in other words, we don't know at this point what the Pri Megadim would hold, whether we say Bitul, whether we say that we go by the majority or not. Unlike the Noida Yehuda, who claimed differently about the Pri Megadim. Now we're not done with the Pri Megadim yet. Next paragraph. V'hagoyin maharam shik v'cheluk erachayim siman reish mem dalid hevi mashakas v'Pri Megadim b'siman samach beis. The great genius known as the Maharam Shik, and he tells us exactly which section in the Code of Jewish Law, he there quotes the Pri Megadim 62 lohichiach, to prove that case where, again, what we just said, that Rabbi Nassan says that one cannot hand Eiver Min HaChai to the non-Jew. And also, that which the Pri Megadim writes, that we can't say in such a case, and the Maharam Shik asks on the Pri Megadim, why can't we? Shuv kasav v'zel shoynoi. And then he writes, and here's the quote. Amnam, however, af l'masha sefer ha-Pri Megadim even according to that which the Pri Megadim holds, the Leishayich Mi'ika Midei Ki Hai Gavna, that it doesn't apply such a thing, even though the Pri Megadim says that. Nire li, it appears to me, says the Maramshik, the Mikol Makim, that nonetheless, Loikasha Laharambam, it is not difficult with Maimonides, the Suffolk Minatera Shari, that a doubt of a biblical prohibition is permitted. It's only where the prohibition has become established that if you're in doubt, do you have to refrain. As he proves from a particular type of a sin offering, a guilt offering. A guilt offering which is called an Asham Talui. Asham Talui, which can only be brought by a Jew, is if a person is in doubt as to whether he transgressed a sin which, had he surely transgressed that sin accidentally, he would have to bring a sin offering called a chatas. So there is a list of sins, certain category of sins, that if a Jew accidentally transgresses, he needs to bring a sin offering. However, if the Jew is in doubt as to whether he transgressed or not, for example, chelev, non-kosher fats of an animal. The animal was slaughtered, the animal is a kosher type of animal, but there's parts of the animal which are not allowed to be eaten. They're not kosher. So chelev is the term we use for non-kosher fats. Shuman is the term we use for kosher fats of the same animal. And if a Jew were to eat chelev willingly, knowingly, it's a big offense and it's a big punishment. And if he eats the chelev by mistake, he thought it was shuman, he thought it was kosher, whatever, and he ate it. And then he realized. Then he has to bring the sin offering. But what happens if he doesn't know? If it was chelev or shuman? He ate it. There were two plates. One was chelev, one was shuman. And two Jews each ate one. There's no way to tell who ate which one now. We don't know. In that case, when a person's in doubt as to whether he even transgressed, he doesn't know, there's a special offering called an Asham Talui. And that is a type of a guilt offering, which he brings, and that will atone until, if he ever finds out the truth. If he finds out that it was permissible what he ate, well, great. Then he didn't have to bring anything. It's fine. If he finds out that, in fact, he did indeed eat the forbidden fats, then the Asham Talui does not atone any longer. It was good until this point. Now he has to bring the sin offering. All right. So what's the point we see from there? That there, the prohibition has not been established. It's not an absolute. Ulefize, mistapik lon, and according to that, we now are in doubt. I begoy safek asur. So now, when it comes to a non-Jew, if there's something that we're not sure if it's forbidden or not, vafilu ikva, and even if it was established that it's forbidden, ikalomemar deshari begoy. There's room to say that it's permissible for the non-Jew to eat it, or whatever the case is, because of the doubt. Even if it was established prohibition, but because right now we're in doubt. It's only by a Jew do we find that the Torah forbids A doubt if the prohibition was established. If the prohibition was not established, then we say even for the Jew it's not forbidden. But if the prohibition was established and now we're in doubt, then for a Jew it's forbidden. But maybe not. But maybe for the non-Jew it doesn't apply. By a ben noyach, by a non-Jew, we don't find that a doubt should be forbidden. The ikal and we can say the suffix shari behu, that a doubt is permitted for them. Af bikva, even if it was an established prohibition. Dala suffix loy nemer azhara, because the Torah did not warn the non-Jew about a doubtful case. Sort of what we mentioned a while ago, that when it comes to any type of punishment that the Jewish court would give for a Jew, whether it's capital, whether it's lashes, whatever it may be. Well, one of the things required is that there was a warning given to the sinner. And the warning has to be an absolute one. You can't tell him something which is vague or doubt. You can't say, maybe that's forbidden. You can't do that. You can't say, what you're about to do might be a sin. That doesn't count. It might be Shabbos today. You're not allowed to do that activity. Oh, what you're about to eat, that might not be kosher. Doesn't work like that. So similarly, even if you have an established prohibition, but if right now I'm in doubt as to whether this piece is that established prohibited piece or not, we don't find that the Torah forbids the non-Jew. There's no warning in the Torah for a non-Jew not to transgress in a case of a doubt. V'im ken, and if so, mima nafshach. Any way you look at it. Im nisarev belach. If it got mixed into something moist, into liquid, which is a whole different category. So it's something which gets diluted physically. The ispe shiur shishim, and there is the amount of 60 times against it. Im kain, if so, kiman delesa. Then it's as if it's not there. That would even be the rule for the Jew. All right? So you have not dry pieces of meat, but you have a stew of kosher meat brewing and some liquid of non-kosher meat got mixed into that. But there's 60 times more against it. The whole mixture remains kosher because that dissolved bit no longer exists. V'gam lohem hani habitul. And then also for a non-Jew, this type of nullification would work, would apply. As the Chasam Sofer, another one of the great rabbis, as he wrote, and how about if the mixture was in something dry, something which doesn't get diluted? So if so, you can pull out each piece, these 3 pieces, whatever the number is. Every one of them is an individual entity, unlike the mixture of something wet. Okay, something wet, got dissolved, it's gone if you have the ratio. Here, the dry pieces, each piece on its own is a doubt. And even without having to say that there's a minority, there's the majority which is greater than the minority, it's 2 pieces against 1, you have to say that. It's a doubt. Each piece you pick up is a doubt. Mishum de safek sharilei. Because a doubt is permitted for them, for the non-Jews. This is how it seems to me, in my, so to say, humble opinion. That is what the Chasam Sofer says. So the Chasam Sofer rules that by non-Jews, a piece of forbidden something, like Eiver Min HaChai, that got mixed, either way, it is permitted. Whether it's a dry mixture or a wet mixture. If it's wet, then it's non-existent. If it's dry, then every single individual piece is a doubt, and that's permitted. The kanire, and apparently it seems, it seems like the Chasam Sofer did not see what the Pri Megadim wrote in that introduction of his. To the Dvar of Sham, because according to his words over there, we have to say that when we would like to answer, to come to a conclusion in this doubt, then in that case, where we do not say that the case of Reb Nassan in the Talmud, which is an Eiver Min HaChai, that got mixed, that Reb Nassan forbids giving the entire mixture to a Ben Noyach, as we said, because you're giving him something which is for sure forbidden. In such a case, there's surely a prohibition. And therefore, that which the Mahram Shik, I'm sorry, when we're saying about the Chasam Sofer, no, not that the Chasam Sofer didn't see the Pri Megadim, but rather the Maharam Shik. And that is because when you're giving one non-Jew all three pieces, you're still giving him a prohibited piece. It's just that each piece on its own is a doubt. Now, even though it's a new paragraph, but it's a continuation, let's go a bit further. All right, last 5 lines on the page here. And it doesn't appear to me, says the S'dei Chemed, Loimar, to say that even if you're extending to the non-Jew all 3 pieces, one of which is forbidden, 2 of which are permitted, and you're giving him all 3, that this genius, the Maram Shik, would hold, that you're not transgressing. It's okay. The Jew is not transgressing this prohibition that we spoke about many times of don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. This man, this Ben Noyach, is not allowed to eat all those 3 pieces. He can only eat 2 out of 3. I just don't know which ones. So, I don't think that the Maram Shik would agree that the Jew is not transgressing, putting a stumbling block before a person. Even though surely one of them is absolutely prohibited, since it's not known which one of the 3 is the prohibited one, every one of them individually is a doubt. You have to look at each of these 3 pieces. Each one of them is a doubt. And it's permitted for the Ben Noach to eat it. It's sort of like, I guess percentage-wise, if I got it right, each piece has a 66% chance of being permitted. You got 3 pieces, 2 are forbidden, 2 are permitted, 1 is forbidden. Every piece on its own right is a doubt. And the chances are, by each piece, that it is permitted. So when the guy ate piece number 1, so to say, we're assuming, well, it's one of the other 2 pieces that are forbidden. When the guy eats number 2, so we're not saying, oh, it's going to be the next piece that's forbidden. we're going to say it's either the piece I already ate or the next piece. And therefore, when it comes to eat piece number 3, we don't say, hey, if you eat this third piece, that means you will have eaten the prohibition. Each piece is judged on its own. The vade loy mistaber klal, for it for sure doesn't make any sense. For if we say that this concept of nullification does not apply to the non-Jew, but the prohibition is still here. How could he eat it? How could the one person eat all 3 pieces? At the end, after eating all 3 pieces, he surely has eaten the forbidden piece. Levad. It's enough for us to permit him to eat 1 piece. That, yes. There's 3 pieces, 2 are good, so I don't know, and therefore you're allowed to eat 1 piece. Even though there's a doubt there too. There's a 33% chance that the 1 piece that he's eating is prohibited. But for him to eat all of them? Even though he's going to surely eat the forbidden one, which did not become nullified, this, there is no logic to permit that, to say that. But rather, the genius has understood the meaning, the intention of the question, that we have to be talking about a case where it was nullified. How's that? 2 against 1. What do you mean nullified? The case is that the Jew is extending to the non-Jew only 1 of the 3 pieces. And therefore, it is good, it's proper the way he responded and says, if so, have a suffix, it's only a doubt. And a doubt is permitted for them, for the non-Jews. Even when the prohibition has been established. In other words, these 3 pieces, we know that one of them is no good. That's an established fact. We just don't know which one. So every piece is a doubt. So therefore, I can give him 1 piece, even though it may not be permissible to eat, and it's an established case over here. Still, it's only a doubt. Therefore, I say, that therefore, had the genius seen these words, meaning of the Pri Megadim, in his introduction, Afhu Ra Shaychacha Me'ahid Perakol Sha'ahi Delukma Bishnis Arva Chaticha Sev Menachai B'Shtei Chatichais Moishit Kol Asholish Chatichais La Ben Noyach Tilei Mehani Bitul La Ben Noyach Asur Lo Hishiton Loi Umutaris LaKlavim. So you have to say that no, actually the case is even if he's giving the Ben Noyach all 3 pieces, and not just 1 piece. And why is it, what's the story there? Why is it permitted? Because there is the concept of Bitul. We do say that we go by the majority, and therefore we do consider that the non-kosher piece, the Eiver Minachai, is not there. Because there are 2 pieces that are good, which outnumber the 1 piece. That's the only way we can permit all 3 for a Ben Noach. So it's not because it's a doubt and a Ben Noach is not forbidden in a doubt. It's because of Bitul, because it's nullified. And therefore, because if not, it would be forbidden for the Ben Noach to eat it. Mutaris l'klavim, it would be permitted for dogs. And what I would be able to do with these 3 pieces, I would not be able to feed it to a Ben Noach. But I'd have to give it to an animal. And since we don't say it in such a case, so from that is proof that the concept of bitul, of something becoming nullified in the majority, and you go by the greater than the lesser, and the 2 outnumber the 1, and therefore it's all good and permissible, that principle does apply to Bnei Noach. And not like we said before, that when the verse says, Achrei Rabbin, go by the majority, that's a principle only for Jews. No, we're saying that is a biblical principle which also applies to non-Jews, that you go by the majority. I think we're going to have to stop here. Until next time. So we're on the towards the top of 32:18, the second paragraph on the page, Umah. And in the meantime, wishing everyone the greatest success in studying, observing, promoting, spreading the awareness of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 biblical divine commandments for all of the non-Jews, to make this world the perfect world that it is meant to be, where all of mankind will recognize God Almighty and serve Him in unison with a complete revelation of our righteous Mashiach now. Thank you.